My name is Megan Nilsson. I go by Crypto Megan, and I will be hosting today one of the most interesting interviews with such a visionary leader in the industry. Here at Proof of Talk, we are gathering with some of the most brilliant minds in this industry to reestablish trust, to lay down the foundations of the future of the industry of Web3. And it is my honor and pleasure today to host Stani Kulechov, technologist, entrepreneur, programmer, decentralized finance innovator, and one of the most important thought leaders in the industry, founder of the decentralized crypto lending platform Aave, one of the largest lending protocols in the world. Stani, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Megan. Thank you for that very big introduction. I personally see myself just a contributor into the Web3 space, but thank you so much.
Absolutely. You've done so much for this space. And so it's a very important conversation that we're going to be having today regarding the building blocks, the core atomic building blocks of the internet and of these decentralized finance innovation going on in the world today, largely of which Aave has been responsible for as one of those pioneers in the space. So jumping right into it, what is your mission at Aave Companies and what exactly is it that you do?
Yeah, I mean, the Aave, the company, we basically build technology that is creating more access and tries to create access to finance and access to ownership as well, which is core part of the Web3. And we want to make the internet more people-powered, meaning that when you look at the internet of today, it's very much owned by businesses and companies. So big tech companies and big businesses as well. And we want to make the internet a bit more equitable, where we have these concepts of decentralized organizations being part of the internet and governing the public infrastructure that should be available to everyone and creating equal access, and also creating more access to the users of internet and finance to basically be contributors and also having a say how these protocols and the future of finance and internet is going to evolve, and also benefit from that process as well. So we want to make the internet just a bit more fair, democratic, and equitable. I personally, so our team built the Aave protocol, and Aave protocol is a decentralized protocol that is running on a few of these blockchains, and allowing users to supply cryptographic assets, earn yield on them, and also borrow against their cryptographic assets as well. We, the team, we don't control the protocol, so it's governed by the Aave DAO, which is basically a decentralized organization that has come together to basically make decisions on how the Aave protocol evolves in the future. Something that is also exciting is that we recently built the Lens protocol, which is more about building Web3 social media protocol. So how we actually bring the ownership of our profiles to the users. So that's basically what we do at Aave.
Wow, that's so interesting. I mean, equal access for all to finance is kind of like a very novel idea in our world, right? So you're doing something that's very, very important on a global scale. It's incredible to see the developments that have been going on within the Aave ecosystem. And so as we segue into the next question, it's important that now that we have these new tools and these new protocols available for the masses and this equal access, that people can feel comfortable using the protocol and they can trust what's happening now that they don't have that central middleman that's supposed to be generating that trust that we've seen before in the traditional world. So in blockchain, we often talk about building trust in a trustless world. What does that mean exactly to you, and how are you able to accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question, because we're trying to build systems, whether it's financial infrastructure as a public good, or let's say decentralized social media, or something else. Because something that is very not widely known is that blockchain is a technology and a solution that could actually be used in many of the industries. So it could actually help governance not only in finance or social media, enabling open algorithms and ownership for the users, but it could be used in any industry around of us, and it actually can empower a lot of the use cases. So that's one thing, and we're trying to build as a kind of like a wider community in the space ways where we don't have that kind of like a central point of failure in the sense of centralization. And that means that we're trying to kind of like reduce the idea of access control and platforms. So there's a very much a concept now that has been discussed quite a lot, is the idea of what is the difference between a platform and a protocol. And internet is heavily relying on this idea of platforms where you can come into a place and it makes very easily accessible to what you want to achieve as a result. So for example, on social media, you can connect with people, you can share things with other people. Maybe in a financial platform, you can actually get access to financial opportunities, but a protocol is something that is actually underneath. So it tries to actually give a bit of more democratic access, and it's available to everyone. And I think decentralization and building kind of like this trustless model is interesting because we're trying to remove those single point of failures or these companies that are governing or pretty much have the whole market of let's say networking, and bring that, removing the access control and bringing the ownership for the users. And that's the kind of idea of that you don't need to trust single entities, specific people that could have access control. And with Aave protocol, you can see it quite easily. So our team can't just go and change any code of the protocol. So it's governed by the Aave DAO, meaning that actually anyone can come and create a proposal and actually pitch to the DAO that, hey, here's what we're thinking how the protocol should change. That could be as simple as changing risk parameters or changing the interest rate strategies, or even how the protocol functions. And then these group of people across globally come together and actually vote whether it really makes sense or not for the protocol itself. And that's kind of the idea of creating a trustless system where one party or entity doesn't have the ability to have that control over protocol. And actually, this is how internet was built in the first place. So internet started as a decentralized network, and it just became more centralized because people were, it was still early, and it was easier for people to actually trust these platforms to distribute content or create information or connect with people, or even use something like financial services to a centralized platform. So it started as decentralized, and now it's kind of like we have this movement of re-decentralizing the internet. And I think that's what the trustless, building trustless systems and Web3 is all about.
Right. It's about establishing that trust within your ecosystem through actions, through the technology, through how you respond to issues as a team, as a community. And as we segue into the part more getting in deeper into the DAO, so you built the Aave protocol and then relinquished control to token holders, and the Aave DAO was formed to govern the protocol, which is what you were previously describing. So you already discussed a little bit about what made you go down the decentralized path, which was that there was a broken system in the Web 2 world that wasn't working for multiple reasons. Can you describe a little bit more in depth why you chose the decentralized route and how it differs from the traditional world? And also then we'll get into the technicals behind how does a DAO work. So first of all, just to delve a little bit deeper into the answer of why did you go the decentralized path and how is it different than a traditional world?
Yeah, no, that's an amazing question, because the probably the biggest interesting question here is that, well, actually, I'm going to answer the question why, because I actually did have to go into a path where we built something that is more centralized. So basically, like what we wanted to provide is that the ability to unlock value of your cryptographic assets by being able to borrow, for example, stable coins and other assets, and being able to actually also earn on your cryptographic assets. And there was two paths to take. One was the decentralized smart contract based kind of like a approach. And then there was the path of actually, why don't we just make a service or a platform out of this and go towards that direction? And we actually took the harder part, which is more difficult, because when we started to build the Aave protocol 6-7 years ago, the first predecessor of that, what was really difficult is that the technology wasn't really ripe, and there wasn't that many users in the space of decentralized finance. I mean, we're talking about maybe 5,000 end users, and it's very early stage, getting excited what's being built, basically programmable financial infrastructure on top of smart contracts, basically protocols that are living on blockchain, and they're accessible, and no one can go and just change those programs, and it just created that like trustless environment. We decided to go the hard way, and I think first I was regretting it because how much work it involved. But one of the key things that really helped is that as the technology started to ripe a bit more, there was more people coming into the community and actually guiding and helping on how the protocol should be built in the future. And I think that was a key difference here, because even if you look at today, the DAO or the DeFi ecosystem in general, anyone can actually participate. So if you compare to the traditional finance, you can't really go and tell to the, let's say, the banks or the markets or the infrastructure, like, hey, let's change the structure or the way this functions, because it could be more safer or risk averse to build this way, or let the market function this way. And I think that's the kind of like a key part, because in decentralization, anyone can come actually and contribute. And that's the beauty of open source decentralized communities. And if you look at today to the Aave DAO and how it functions, there's external risk contributors, for example, Gauntlet, Chaos Labs, that directly actually give their opinions on risk parameters. There's builders that are actually developing the protocol further without our team actually involved. There's also risk management, besides risk management services, also smart contract auditing and security services. So all these service providers actually coming and providing their services directly to the DAO without the founding team actually needing to be involved at all, which is super exciting, because if you like some sort of DeFi protocol and how it functions, you have actually opportunity to participate on how that protocol will evolve. And why it's important is because we really want to actually decide on what kind of financial system we will live in the future. And that's the best opportunity to do by contributing to decentralized protocols and the DAOs.
That's very interesting. So by having the community give their input as a whole, the idea is that we'll be able to build a more wholesome, more inclusive system that gives access to all, instead of a closed system that's controlled by the few. And we're able to see that protocol be developed as we go, which is really incredible. So we'd like you to let us in on a little bit more on how the Aave DAO works. And what do you think are the key ingredients to running a successful trusted protocol?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say like what's the really right answer, because I don't really have like a playbook of basically like how the decentralization aspect works. So for example, that's, in the beginning, like in many cases, all these inventions that are happening in innovation in the space comes from a few individuals, and then they're cascading into wider, bigger teams that are then working on the different topics, and then slowly turning into more community initiatives and becoming DAOs progressively. So, and also decentralization is a spectrum. So it means that you don't really need from security perspective to add the same level of decentralization to every single use case. I think because that kind of defeats the purpose of adding like too much security, because that's where the decentralization comes always with a cost, and things might move also slower if you want to build something where you have to move relatively quickly. But in the part of like what to do right in managing a DAO, that's a very interesting question, because I don't participate that much in the DAO ecosystem. I'm more of a person that is interested about the innovation side, what can be built and what's really empowering, enabling users and people around the world. And then I'm super excited that there's actually community members that then can take that work and just push it forward and manage those protocols. And I think down the line, as the ecosystem gets more mature, we will see more best practices. I do see that the Aave DAO is becoming more kind of like a professionalized. So it's not only community members across the world just contributing for fun, but actually you have delegate platforms that are actually actively seeking voting power to contribute and be part of the decision making, providing services to the Aave DAO. And I think that's very valuable because I think part of the idea of getting more adoption and more, for example, institutions excited about what we're building, we basically need to have a financial ecosystem that's very resilient, robust, but also it has all the ingredients that it could actually scale on a professional basis and could actually work as a financial infrastructure. And in my opinion, like DeFi just is better, faster, stronger finance. And I think that that's the part of the innovation. So you have all this transparency, so you can actually you can build things that you can build before because of the black boxes that exist in traditional finance.
Wow, there's so much to unpack with what you just said, but I love the bigger, better, faster, stronger finance. I mean, that's just a great tagline, right? And so the black box is no longer a thing, and now we're building as a community, and so that innovation can empower, much more powerful system than the guarded black box model could, which is really interesting. And transparency, something that has not traditionally existed in this world. And so it's so interesting to see you have grown from 5,000 excited users as a hobby to see where this thing goes to now scaling globally and really making an impact in the financial world. And this is now one of the largest protocols, lending protocols in the world. You've become really important in this movement, and it's very cool to see.
Well, I think also it's very early in the sense that DeFi is very small. I mean, the amount of users compared to finance in general is still relatively small. So there's like a lot of work to do as a space in general. But I think the foundation has been built now, and it's easier from here to move forward. So I'm happy to see that there are people excited about the innovation and what we built, because you kind of can easily lose hope on something that you spent like half a decade on building. So I'm pretty excited how things are moving forward.
No, absolutely. And that's what this space is all about. It's about resilience when you're so new in something and it takes such a long time for people to catch on, relatively long. I mean, it's the fastest growing technology adoption curve ever, right? But a long time for these to be adopted, for them to be matured. I mean, you're a pioneer in the space. And if you don't have that consistency and that resilience, it's hard to make it through until you see it to the other side, right? So as we segue to the next question, trust is essential for financial protocols such as Aave protocol. Is trust important for the Lens protocol, your social networking platform?
Yeah, I mean, the way we see it is actually that, and the way we actually have been building Lens protocol, it's essentially different kinds of social networking behavior that happens on the internet on an ongoing basis. So what we look at is that how people connect over the internet, how they create content, how they share things that they like, and also how they might monetize their presence and content creation online. And what we notice is that there's certain things that really the platforms don't really provide, because they want to actually have some sort of oversight of the users and the content networks and keep the users coming back and be engaged. So we noticed that actually blockchain could be a very good solution on securing some of the behavior, and we call them like artifacts. So one of the artifacts is the idea of creating your online presence. So the fact that you create your online presence and you can't port it from one platform to another is in my opinion very big deficit, because actually, like, if you can own your profile, you kind of like shift the idea. You are not really vendor locked into a platform, but you can actually start moving with your profile, and anyone can actually build things. And another thing is the part of the audience that you create. So for example, if you have a big audience in one platform, you can't really own that audience. You can't really port that away anywhere, and that's something that blockchain secures well. And then we have this idea of kind of like a data scalability with data availability. So something that we really don't think about too often is that, what if some of these bigger platforms, blogging sites, for example, what if they disappear tomorrow? What happens to all the content that we create? So let's say that if we create this video and we share it across some of the video platforms, what happens if they go out of business, for example, tomorrow, to the actual content itself? So data availability plays a big role in that. So what we are using also, one of the concepts of the blockchain, data availability, to ensure that that data can exist. And then it's up to the actual developers and end users to choose what of the ingredients they actually want to use for their own use case. And something that we think is super valuable is that you have this kind of like a shared network. So for example, if you have an application and you have users on Lens, if there's another application coming, they might onboard new users as well. So you have this kind of like shared user base, which basically helps to share monetization, but also share all the traction. So it reduces also the cold start problem. And when the trust actually comes to in place, obviously with using blockchain, we can reduce the idea of you needing to trust an application. So we kind of like remove the trust element away from the application level and bring ownership to the users. But social media requires slightly different architecture than, for example, finance, because in finance you want to ensure that you have the maximum security at cost, and in social media you don't really need blockchain for every single thing. And that's why, for example, we don't use the blockchain necessarily for things where you want to just create content and you want to make it available and accessible, but you don't necessarily need to have that content reflected through the blockchain, unless you want to tokenize that content, which is very popular today. That creators, such as, for example, artists, musicians, they're actually publishing their music and creativity through the by using the blockchain and creating NFTs out of the experience, which has been interesting way to see how these users are monetizing their creativity. So I think there's like a less of the trust element there, but by using blockchain, you really can empower the users by bringing them ownership to their online presence, and that changes the relationship with the platforms, because then you don't need to rely on them when you are creating your online presence and network.
Wow. As a creator myself, it really comes in resoundingly clear. We're all living on borrowed land.
Yes, exactly.
It's not ours.
I love what you're saying, because we have this concept as well in our team that we believe that the internet is now kind of like for rent. So we are basically renting space in the internet, and what Lens and the next internet will be is that you can actually own that piece of land online, which is insane.
And that's what we have now, real, true, authentic ownership of not only the protocol, what we're doing on the protocol, but also of our data. This has been essentially a data war, right? All of these social media platforms, what they have is control of the data. And the other question that you raised, which is what happens if you go out of business? That is the centralized platform question, and it is the centralized platform question in all areas, including finance, right? Including everything that happens in the world. We're dependent on whether or not that company does well. And so that's something that blockchain and decentralized protocols have been able to revolutionize. And you mentioned music on the blockchain, and I launched a podcast a couple of weeks ago. I had Snoop Dogg's family on, and we were just talking all about, tokenizing that, putting the music on the blockchain, creating NFTs and giving people rights to it. I mean, this just opens up the doors for so much innovation, which of course you are an advocate for and the main pioneer of in the decentralized finance revolution. So there's so many important things about what you just unpacked. And the last thing I'll highlight is the fact that you don't have to have that cold start. So as a creator myself, that is very important when you're transitioning to a new platform, that you've got to start over. You've got the idea of portability and interoperability of those users or followers or fans is huge.
Yeah.
So that's incredible.
And I think the portability is also a choice. So for example, let's say there's a new application that everyone is excited about, and the creators of the application and the audience, the creators itself, they can actually choose that they don't need to have all their audience there. So but having that portability is very valuable, because we do recognize that having a shared network will benefit with the cold start challenge, but also down the line it actually helps to create let's say people who are interested in music, the specific application, and you will see more also curated approaches. But just having that choice, that everything is available for you as a social media developer and a creator, I think that's very powerful. And then it's up to the actual people who are using and building the experiences to decide like what's going to be the end result.
Oh yeah, and I've hosted interviews and questions before about do we really need Web3? People from the Web2 world asking, what does Web3 do that we can't do in Web2? And well, there it is. I mean, it's the interoperability, it's the ownership, it's your data, it's all of those important elements that are revolutionizing how we interact as a society and how we do business and how we transact. And it's more free, it's more equal, and it's more accessible. So there's absolutely a use case for it. And you guys are doing some amazing things for the creator world. We are in the creator economy now, and the boom of the creator economy. So this is coming at a very crucial time. And for the next question, do you see blockchain use cases helping to build familiarity and trust in the blockchain industry?
Yeah, definitely. I think most of the use cases are very intangible for the end users, and that's where the kind of like that's where a lot of the questions comes. For example, like, well, how it will help my life, or like I think like decentralized finance is an extremely good use case, and it shows that okay, you have actually a financial system that can be built in a way that it's very difficult to change. It's transparent. It functions, as it's being programmed, and there's like a lot of exciting things around that. But then, not all people in the planet really, use, let's say, finance in general. They use to some extent, but like most of their time goes into some other things. And I think the use cases of Web3 social are very promising. But I think we as the innovators within the space, we have to go a bit further and try to bring some, simple, tangible use cases that are applicable globally. And I think that could bring power to power of actually showing like what the blockchain can actually be capable of and how it could actually help. And there's really so many things where you can inject the idea of a blockchain where it could be actually helpful, especially in the field of access control. And access control is something where it's everywhere. So it's in every single application on the internet, but also every single hardware application in real life. Whatever device you're using, there's some sort of access control mechanisms. And I think that's where basically the blockchain technology can help. And access control is basically a form of governance, and on a wider kind of like a scope, governance itself is a very valuable tool. And some of the things in the future, blockchain might be the only way to govern. So, for example, if you think about AI, how are we going to govern AI? How are we going to govern something that is smarter than us without setting rules that are in a distributed ledger that aren't like basically can't be just arbitrary change, but requires people's participation and votes to change those systems. And and I think that's where things become interesting. Like, what's the like a bigger use case for the blockchain besides of that the application level use cases? Like, how far we can go with the governance? Can we govern countries with the blockchain technology, or something where few countries agree upon? So that's where things become very exciting for me.
Well, there's a few big ideas that you unpacked there. And so as we finish up this interview, what I'd like to ask you are a few additional questions, just that we would like to know, coming from industry leaders and pioneers like you who are literally, making this as you go and learning from what you're doing in the process. And you have nobody kind of to serve as an example because we are so new. So looking back as a founder, is there anything you would have changed, or what have you learned from your initial kind of work in this space to where you are now that you would do differently?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to think what could be what could I change. I definitely will put more effort in valuing like how important the messaging is, and education. I think that's something that I will have rather started a bit earlier and just educated that what are the benefits of decentralized finance. And I mean, we've been doing that, and there's a lot of resources available online and across different communities. But I think just like valuing how important that is in a more like a bigger scale, especially because it's very hard to understand necessarily what, for example, what the blockchain does and what kind of benefits it provides. But when you go use case specific, like decentralized finance or other use cases, it becomes like overly complicated. So focusing more on that educational piece would have been probably something I would do more.
Yeah, and I think the growth of your network speaks for itself, of the protocol. So, people are learning, they are adopting this. It is something that is taking this industry by storm, and you've done such an exceptional job of making sure that the community has a voice and that they're heard and that they're building on top of what the community believes to be the best path forward. So education is so important, and I think you guys have been doing an excellent job at that. So for the last question, where do you see the future of decentralized finance in Aave in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I think, well, we do envision a more people-powered internet. So we will see probably more DAOs evolved, and decentralized finance becoming more accessible, but also resilient. I think many of these protocols are becoming resilient in terms of like time that has passed and how they have proven worked in the past years. So just becoming kind of like a understood globally that decentralized finance is actually very good infrastructure to be used. So I think that's going to be like something where we evolve, where there's going to be a consensus that it's a technology that could actually be used as a basis for public good finance, and then you can build different kinds of things on top of the infrastructure. I mean, for us, we're simply, we're a technology company, and obviously we want to contribute a bit into the ecosystem in the future, and obviously Lens has been a big thing, but we do see that the internet will slowly switch to a more people-powered and user-owned network, and being part of that and contributing to that vision is going to be our future. And obviously, because it's a decentralized future, we probably aren't going to build everything, but focusing on those few important things that make a big difference is where we're going to focus on.
Right, because you say in some interviews that you're not a DeFi company, you're a Web3.
Yeah.
Right, and so that's that goes much more deep and much more broad, and it's very impactful.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so Stani, thank you so much for being here today. It's been an honor and a pleasure to get your consensus, your opinion on all of this, and to go ahead and see on the insights into what Aave is building. And we really appreciate you being here on behalf of Proof of Talk. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Megan. Thank you for the interview.
Thank you.